In a world plagued by generic noise, one goblin can save us all.
Hey gang! Using the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, will get you 10% off any order over $10 at Flipside Gaming. It'll also get you 10% off any orders of singles at Multizone. And it'll get you 10% off most products at Original Magic Art, with the exceptions of some paintings. If these fine sites don't have what you're looking for, you can also consider using my affiliate link when ordering from TCG Player. And if you'd like to join the Generic Goblin Gang to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. Today's game marks the last matchup from Magic Fest Montreal. I'm doing this mostly to give myself a bit of a break, and also to start showcasing some of the new commanders. We have 2 old friends and 2 new friends joining us for today's game. First up, Mathieu is playing his Anafenza deck, keeping a Forest, a Marsh Flats, Savannah, Isolated Chapel, Mesa Enchantress, and Replenish. Francis is playing his Sidisi deck, keeping an Ancient Tomb, Frantic Search, Protean Hulk, Damnation, Swamp, Mana Confluence, and Dread Return. Kevin is also new, and he's playing his Zurgo deck, keeping a Swamp, a Badlands, a Rakdos Signet, a Wrath of God, Zealous Conscripts, and Anguished Unmaking. And last but not least, Renaud is playing his Kadena deck, keeping Secret Plans, Thran Dynamo, Scroll of Fate, Quarcy Deceiver, Evolving Wilds, and an Opulent Palace. Kevin wins the die roll and starts us off. Kevin plays a Badlands. Mathieu plays a Marsh Flats. Renaud plays an Opulent Palace, which comes in tapped. Francis plays his Ancient Tomb, and at the end of turn, Matt cracks his Marsh Flats, losing 1 to find a land. Kevin plays a Clifftop Retreat, and casts Rakdos Signet. By now, Mathieu has found an overgrown tomb, and starts his turn. Mathieu plays a Terramorphic Expanse, passing. Renaud plays an Evolving Wilds, and cracks it while passing turn. Francis plays a Mana Confluence, and passes. Kevin plays a Swamp, while Mathieu finds a Swamp from cracking his Terramorphic. Kevin then plays Mother of Ruins, and passes. Mathieu plays an Isolated Chapel, and pays 1 of each color for Anafenza. Responding to the commander, Francis loses 3 life to cast Frantic Search, drawing 2, and discarding 2, notably Nezahal and Protean Hulk, and untaps his lands. Sadly, he couldn't find a counter, and Anafenza resolves. Renaud plays a Sakur Tribe Elder, and passes. Francis plays a Swamp, and he casts Reanimate to bring back Nezahal, really subscribing to the Life is a Resource mantra. Kevin plays a Plains, and pays for Zurgo in his main phase. He heads to combat, swinging Zurgo at Francis, who blocks with Nezahal, and before damage is dealt, Francis discards 3 cards to exile it until end of turn. Kevin then passes, and at the end of turn, the dinosaur returns. Mathieu plays a Savannah, and pays 4 to cast Agent of Erebos. The agent comes in and targets Francis, who loses 1 life to tap his Mana Confluence, and he casts Veil of Summer. He draws from it, and fizzles the Enter the Battlefield trigger, so Matt decides to hit him with Anafenza before passing turn. At the end of turn, Renaud sacrifices his Elder to find a basic. Renaud draws, but can't find a land. He does have enough for a Quarcy Deceiver though, and he casts it before passing. Francis plays a Swamp, and with a sizable yard, is able to cast Stitch Together, meeting the threshold requirements. This lets him bring back the Protean Hulk from his yard, and with nothing else, he passes. Kevin plays an Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, and Renaud realizes he should have exiled his Elder because of Anafenza being on the field. Kevin then casts a Zealous Conscripts, stealing the Nezahal from Francis. Heading to combat, Zurgo and the Conscripts go at Mathieu, while Kevin flirts with irony by swinging Nezahal at Francis. Both of the gentlemen take the hit, and Kevin then passes. Mathieu plays a Forest and casts Wild Growth onto a Swamp, which lets Francis draw from Nezahal's trigger. This also triggers the Agent of Erebos, and Matt finally gets Francis this time with the Exile trigger. He then plays a Mesa Enchantress before passing turn. Renaud casts a Scroll of Fate in his main phase, and Francis draws from the Dinosaur. Unfortunately, due to lighting, we don't see the land that Francis plays for his turn, and it comes in tapped, and he passes. Kevin pays 2 for Key to the City, and Francis draws. Before moving to combat, Kevin activates the key, discarding Reanimate to give Zurgo Unblockable. He swings his commander at Francis, dealing 7. Mathieu plays a Temple of Plenty, scrying 1 and bottoming it. He casts City of Solitude, which has Francis drawing a card, and then Mathieu draws a card from the Enchantress. Mathieu also has a trigger from the Agent, and he exiles Kevin's Yard. He then plays Solitary Confinement, with Francis drawing again, and Matt drawing a card from the Mesa Enchantress. He then heads to combat, swinging Anafenza and the Agent at Kevin, which triggers Anafenza, and lets Matt put a +1/+1 counter onto the Agent. Kevin decides to just take the hit, and with nothing else, Mathieu passes. Renaud activates his scroll and manifests a card from his hand. He then plays Secret Plans, before tapping the rest of his mana to morph his Inox Survivalist. It's turned face up and blows up Kevin's Key to the City, and he also gets to draw from the Secret Plans. He luckily finds a land, playing Golgari Guildgate, which comes in tapped, and he passes. Francis plays an island for turn, and swings the Protean Hulk at Kevin. Kevin takes the hit rather than block, and Francis passes. Kevin pays 4 in his main phase now that Zurgo is indestructible again for a Wrath of God. With the City of Solitude sitting across from him, there's not much anyone can really do, and the board gets wiped. Sadly, because Anafenza is out, she sees all the creatures dying, and instead exiles them. Kevin then heads to combat, and swings his commander at Renaud for 7. He then passes. Mathieu discards a Forest to the Confinement on his upkeep, and he plays an Argothian Enchantress. He follows up with Starfield of Nyx, drawing from the Enchantress on cast trigger, and he passes turn. Renaud taps out for a Thran Dynamo, and then taps that for a Heartstone. He then manifests a card with his scroll, and he passes turn. Francis loses another 2 life to help cast Buried Alive. He finds a Bane of Progress, a Razaketh, and a Villas, any of which are great reanimate targets. 2 mana that gets him a Dance of the Dead, which brings back the Bane of Progress, and just as quickly as it enters, it goes back to the yard after blowing up all enchantments and artifacts. Francis then loses another 1 life by tapping his Confluence to help pay for a Felwar Stone before passing to Kevin. Kevin casts Night's Whisper in his main phase, losing 2 life and drawing 2 cards. He plays his own copy of Ancient Tomb, and taps it, taking 2 for an Umezawa's Jitte. He slaps that bad boy onto Zurgo, and goes at Francis again, putting him to 1, and gaining 2 charge counters onto his Jitte. Mathieu draws, and he casts Replenish in his main phase, bringing back everything Francis tried so hard to destroy. They all then come in, and Mathieu gets a bunch of exile triggers from the Agent, and exiles everything forever basically. He then plays a Sterling Grove, drawing from the Enchantress, and plays a Forest. Renaud plays a Bajuka Bog, sadly a turn too late, and he can't even hit Matt's yard now. We then see a Vivian, Champion of the Wilds, hitting the field, and he downticks her to exile a card, which he nicely shows to the camera. Heading to combat, he sends his manifest creature in Kevin's direction for 2 after making a deal with Francis. Francis draws and plays out an artifact, and then a Viscera Seer. He's trying to find an answer to keep himself alive at this point, but with 1 foot in the grave, even when he casts Mission Briefing, he can't find an answer. He then does the only honorable thing he can do, and he taps his Mana Confluence to take himself out of the game. Kevin plays a Swamp, and uses Swords to Plowshares on the Sterling Grove, as it's technically animated because of Starfield of Nyx. Responding to this, Mathieu sacrifices it to find an enchantment and puts it on top. He finds a Living Plane and puts it there. Kevin then swings Zurgo at the only opponent he has that'll actually lose life, and Renaud suggests going at Vivian, but Kevin isn't buying it. This has the Jitte gaining even more counters, and Kevin then plays an Anguish Unmaking in his post-combat main phase, losing 3 life to exile the Solitary Confinement. Mathieu draws his Living Plane, and brings back the Sterling Grove with the Starfield trigger. He casts an Eternal Witness, who comes in and returns Replenish to his hand. Moving to combat, Since he has enough enchantments for Starfield to act like opalescence, Matt swings his team at Kevin, putting him to 4. Renault draws for turn and casts a morph creature face down. He upticks Vivian and gives his older manifest creature vigilance and reach until his next turn, and passes. Kevin casts the tear half of Wear and Tear, targeting the only enchantment he can, Matt's Sterling Grove again. He then heads to combat, swinging Zurgo at Mathieu, who blocks with Eternal Witness. This triggers both Zurgo gaining a +1/+1 counter from killing a creature, and the Jitte. In Kevin's second main phase, Entomb goes to find and Binz seize the day. Kevin then casts the extra combat spell for the flashback cost, and gains another combat step. Again, Zurgo goes at Matt, who blocks with the Enchantress this time. More counters get put on stuff, and before passing to Matt, Kevin goes to 16 by removing all the counters from his Jitte. On his upkeep, Mathieu targets his Sterling Grove with the Starfield of Nyx trigger. The Grove then re-enters, and before going to his draw step, Mathieu sacrifices it to find an enchantment. He finds an Ethereal Absolution, which he draws for turn and immediately casts. Heading to combat, since Mathieu has enough enchantments on the field, including the hidden wild growth you can't see, so don't even start with the Matt didn't have enough comments. He swings his enchantments at Kevin for 10. Sadly for Kevin, he has no choice but to take the hit. Renault plays an island and taps out for Ugin the Ineffable. He then down-ticks the Spirit Dragon to blow up Matt's Starfield of Nyx. He then upticks Vivian to give his morph creature, not the manifest creature, vigilance and reach, and he hits Kevin for 1 because of the Ethereal Absolution, reducing his power and toughness by -1/-1. Kevin draws and goes to combat, swinging Zurgo at Mathieu. Mathieu blocks with the Agent, with Zurgo gaining another +1/+1 counter as it dies, and the Jitte gaining some counters as well, and with nothing else, Kevin passes. Mathieu plays a Plains and pays 4 for Living Plane, which, working in tandem with the Ethereal Absolution, kills all of his opponent's lands while at the same time making his 2/2s. He then swings enough to take out Kevin, and sends the rest at Ugin. Renault blocks one of the lands, and with nothing else, Mathieu passes. Renault draws and plays a land, forgetting about the whole Living Plane, and it dies. At this point, he asks if he can scoop it up, and considering his position, Mathieu agrees for him to concede. Game review time. So, before you say anything, yes, I know there was a big misplay when Matt used his Sterling Grove to find an enchantment when he had the City of Solitude out. Mistakes happen. There were some minor ramifications as a result of this, especially when he was able to tutor for 2 enchantments with the cards, but I don't know what to tell you, so hopefully you enjoyed the game. Francis had a very interesting take on Sidisi, and he lost a lot of life trying to do what his deck wanted to do. It was very unfortunate that the Anafenza was out when the Protean Hulk was killed, because if she hadn't been, I think the game could have gone very differently. Kevin's Zurgo deck certainly seemed like a very stock list with a lot of equipment and extra combat step spells, which I always enjoy seeing. I don't have much to say about Renault's deck because unfortunately it seemed very much like a stock Kadena list, and he was really mana screwed early on. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/mtgmudsta, and lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/mtgmudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.